Laugh at the cringe, learn from the crumble. This is Cringe and Crumble. Welcome to the podcast where honesty meets humor and the messy parts of life finally get their spotlight. I'm your host, Tranisha, and here we dive into dating, friendships, healing, and all the awkward in-betweens. Because here's the truth. Growth isn't always pretty, but it's always real. So let's get into it. Welcome back to Cringe and Crumble. I'm your host, Tranisha, and today we're going to be talking about a truth that often gets lost in noise. That is that confident women don't compete. Now, let's pause on that for a second, because when you're secure in who you are, there's no urge to measure yourself against someone else's timeline or success. Competition fades, and what arises instead is collaboration and self-assurance. But here's the flip side, though. Society constantly conditions us to believe that there's not enough room for all of us, that if she shines, somehow you can't. And that mindset doesn't just drain us, it pits us against one another. And in reality, we are stronger when we stand side by side. Now, in this episode, we're going to be breaking down why competition is a trap, how confidence shifts the narrative, and what it really looks like when women celebrate each other instead of comparing themselves. Now, you'll probably notice that I said we, which means there's two of us. And I say that because today is a special day because I am actually joined by my great friend, Natalya Turner-Chapman. Let me tell you a little bit about her before she gets to introduce herself because she is the best. Natalya is an Air Force veteran, a creative entrepreneur, and an author of Anchored and Grace. It is a journey of faith, solitude, healing, and transformation. Natalya, I'm so happy to have you here. I want to welcome you to the Cringe and Crumble stage, so I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself to everyone.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Tranisha. Thank you for having me on the Cringe and Crumble podcast. You said the title of my journal perfectly. As you mentioned, I'm Natalya. My journal, Anchored in Grace, was born from my own personal journey of healing, solitude, and soul work. And so now I'm passionate about helping other women do the same. I'm truly honored to be here today with my friend Tranisha for a conversation that I know will speak to many, especially women, who carry the weight of being the only one in the room. This episode and our friendship is something very rooted and something sacred to me. And that is confident women don't compete, they co-create. We met working in the same environment, and instead of falling into comparison, we chose connecting to each other. That's not always the norm, especially for some Black women in leadership spaces, but it's a narrative that we're both committed to change.
Thank you, Natalya. You actually hit it right on the head, how we met. So Natalya and I met at a nonprofit. Like you said, immediately there was recognition. There's two Black women that are on this intro call. And I think it was you, Natalya, who zoomed in and was like, there's another Black woman. I'm going to IM you. We need to get together. Which is true. And we met over at Eddie V's. You asked me to join you for happy hour. And I was like, of course, I'm going to join you. That was, I don't know how many years ago. And we are like the best of friends.
I think it was 2021.
Yeah. So
it was 2021.
But that is amazing that we actually stayed great friends. And this is a true testament of that. Confident women don't have to compete. And I think you mentioned before that Black women, it's really interesting because oftentimes we're isolated, but what happens is connection is power. And I think we both saw that within one another because it's like, you know what? We're in this space together. Let's help elevate one another to the next level.
Seeing you, because we both started the job at the same time. And so I think when they introduced you on the Teams meeting and they said you were in LA, because I'm looking at the screen of people that are in our company, not too many of us. So when I saw that you were actually in LA, I was like, hey, girl, hey, how are you? I'm in LA. Do you want to go to happy hour so we can catch up, so we can figure out and navigate new employees at this company together? And it turned out to be the best. When I see other Black women that show up in spaces that are not as diverse, especially in the workspaces, I always have a sense of joy. I welcome them in because I don't view it as competition. I immediately like, oh, that could be a new connection, like somebody that you can co-create with so you don't have to navigate their space alone. made me immediately like, oh no, I've reached out. And from that day on, we have been like thick as thieves.
We really
Oh.
have. We really have, which is so amazing. And, it's so funny. This episode actually born out of a quote I overheard Miley Cyrus saying, confident women don't compete. And I was like, you know what? Let's dive a little bit deeper. I really want to understand what that means. And as I was writing it down and getting my perspective for this episode, you popped into my head. I don't think I would have done this episode with anyone else besides you. So I just want to let you know that. Okay.
Honored.
So that being said, let's talk about where did this narrative come from? Because why do we even believe there can only be one? I want to hear your perspective on it, but I also want to kind of talk about what I think. If you ever think about it, it's kind of from our childhood, like that cultural conditioning. When we were kids, girls are often taught that beauty and attention and opportunities are scarce. So when you equate that with when you're in a corporate environment or any other environment where there's not that many women that are in senior positions, immediately you're thinking to yourself, I've got to compete because there's not a lot of room for us. And I also go back and think about that generation impact as well, because it's generational in the sense that we're inherited this idea that to rise, someone else has to fall. And I want to hear your perspective of why do you think, where this narrative came from?
I agree with you. I think the idea that there's only room for one is rooted in deep unhealed wounds. In my Anchored in Grace journal, I talk about the impact of core wounds in chapter 5 and the power of self-awareness in chapter 6. Whether it came from childhood experience, what we have absorbed through the media, or the way we were conditioned in school or the workplace, many of us were taught to strive to outperform and survive, even if it meant seeing other women, especially Black women, as threats instead of allies. And I think that's bad. Because for me, as a Black woman, the majority of my professional career, I have been sometimes the only woman and definitely the only Black. Sometimes it can feel empowering. If I'm honest, it can also be incredibly lonely. So that's why for me, I always have a sense of joy if I see another Black woman come into that space. And I don't view it as a competition. I see it as an immediate connection. So that's why when I saw you on the screen, I was like, hey, girl.
I don't look like a threat,
Exactly. And so because to me, sisterhood isn't a threat. It's a gift, especially in diverse places. It's a powerful reminder that, hey, we're not alone here.
Yeah.
Like we can navigate these treacherous waters together because they were treacherous there.
Those are treacherous waters. I'm ready for our Netflix documentary. Netflix, you're going to give us a documentary about this.
Right.
But also, what I also find that this narrative is that when there's one woman, and it's not a lot of women that work within one organization, they like to gatekeep that information because to them, they are the power, and anyone else that's trying to even get to their level, they see as a threatening force. But what I've also read about is that if there's multiple women on the same C-suite or any other like higher level position, they are more attuned to not seeing other women as competition. Because to them, it's like, there's a whole table for us. Let's keep this journey going. It's always when it's a very scarce amount of us in a room. And that's where it gets kind of tricky. I want to talk about what competition really looks like, because this ties into that. Research has shown that it's indirect competition a lot of the times from women. Sometimes women do it directly, but it's more behind the scenes. It's also the subtle thing where it's not loud at all. There's not this loud woman that's sitting there and trying to take your space. Unlike men don't see each other as competition. Women were too busy infighting one another, and it's not a good look. But I think a key point, and I want you to kind of talk about this yourself, is like silence when another woman succeeds. Like sometimes you get a backhanded compliment. There's comparisons on social media. Have you ever experienced that in your time?
Yes. And like you mentioned, competition, it doesn't always look like sabotage. It can just be silence, no light, no congrats, no eye contact with your comedian. Speak up about something. It's like that quiet tension that show up when another woman shines, and instead of celebration, there's withdrawal. There's, like I said, silence or a scroll past moment. And for me personally, I just recently kind of like experienced some of this energy since I have released my journal, and especially from some women that I know. At first, it stung a little bit, but I had to remind myself that like their silence or distance isn't always about me, right? And so I chose to not absorb it because, I've done this work to recognize that sometimes people respond from a wounded place that they haven't healed or even acknowledged yet, right?
Mm.
And so that's where like grace comes in, like grace for myself and grace from them. And that's why I talk about in my journal about self-awareness and even shadow work. Sometimes it takes that deep, honest work to take and process the parts of yourself like fear, insecurities, grief, and the trauma, because if you don't address that, then that's where that silent competition thing comes from, where you can see another woman shining, you choose not to congratulate her because you may feel a little bit envious or jealous or comparing. So I think it's rooted in that work of self-awareness and even like some of that shadow work.
That's so
It's
true.
unfortunate, but I choose to just absorb it and give people grace. A wounded place.
You know what it all is, though? It's just a lot of jealousy because jealousy basically reframes another's win as their loss. So in a sense, you win, that means they think in their head that they're losing. So it's like if you shine, they fade, so they have to throw shade at you, which really kind of sucks because as a friend, I think we all should be on the same team and that if I win, you should know that you're going to win. I have a podcast, you have a book, you're going to come on my podcast. We're going to talk about this because when you win, I'm going to stop working. So that's cool. So,
Right. We already said that vice versa, right?
yes, we already said that's what we're going to be doing. I like to think that in any of my friendships, and if you're with any other friends that you have as women, that they're not your frenemies. You mentioned before that you released your book, you didn't get the congratulations, people were kind of looking at you sideways. And it's really kind of sad because you thought those are your true friends, but until you come out with something that they didn't know that you were you're not even secretly doing, but you're back in the background doing you, that it's kind of like they feel as though, oh, I'm a little betrayed because I didn't know you were doing this. And what makes you think that you are able to do such a thing? You know?
That's the energy that I felt. And I had to realize that energy that people put out or women put out has nothing to do with me and everything to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why just in this conversation, like we often think competition and comparison in the issue, but I truly believe like underneath it is that shadow wound, that story that people are telling themselves that they're not enough, they're not seen, they're not safe to be who they are. For me, I always show up as my authentic self. And so like if you show up as an authentic, we both show up as our authentic selves, but there's not a lot of women confident in necessarily doing that. And they don't like that when other women can just be themselves. They're like, hey, this is me, like, take it or leave it, you know? And I just feel like a lot of us we kind of just move through life unaware of those shadows and that, unconsciously you allow them to influence your choices and your decisions and your reactions and your relationship, you know? That,
It is
yeah.
kind of sad. And that kind of segues into our next topic of what's that psychological cost, right? When I was doing the research, they were saying competition among women is linked to reduced mental well-being and higher relational conflicts. It makes you very stressed. It's envy, it's isolation. It's a heavy weight on that person having this envious thought process about someone else. They're actually competing with you without you even knowing. So they're just competing with
Right.
themselves. It's like, you don't know if the grass is greener on the other side, but I'm going to compete because I want to get on the other side for what, right? And it's a mental gymnastics, I like to think as well, like to be like this type of person. And you said it best, like being your authentic self, it's so much easier. My grandfather said it best. Not everyone's going to like you for who you are, so you might as well just be yourself. And so every day I'm like, I'm just going to do me. I'm just going to be me.
And I think that's why it's important, right? To kind of choose that self-awareness over defensiveness and compassion over competition. And when you do that, you stop projecting the pain. And you start cultivating peace within yourself. So, no, seriously, like if you like, look, let me be a little self-aware and I kind of have some negative waves, negative energy. Let me stop competing with people because now I'm projecting all that onto this person who had nothing to do with it, or even knew that you were envious or that you were competing with them. They're just living their lives. Like they're just being authentic. They're just stepping up to the calling that God told them that they had, which is me in my case. Like I never knew that I was going to set out to be an author and release a journal. That was never anything on my bingo card. Like you could have never told me that. But God tapped me for that. And he said, you need to share your story. You need to put something out to help people and that can guide them through these things. And so I think that's why for me, I'm an advocate of doing the work, the real authentic soul work to heal some of it. We wouldn't have to have conversations like this about why are women competing?
No, you're so right. You just hit the nail on the head when you said, I'm willing to do the authentic work. Not everyone's willing to do that work because it takes a lot of looking at your inner self.
It's
You have to
hard.
see the ugly and the good. It's very hard. Like, there is years where you just spend by yourself because you're better off by yourself than in a relationship. I always tell
Exactly.
people, if you're not healed from within, you're not going to be good for someone else. You can go on a date, but they can tell that you are not a healed person.
You're going to keep attracting that same type, right? I feel like a lot of the times we say like, oh, we want this type of man or we want this or that, but we're not even that. Before I met my husband, I took time out from dating, those situations of nothing because I was like, look, I have a problem. Like I keep attracting emotionally unavailable men. So there's something in me that I need to work on, right? Because for some reason I keep being led to the type of man. By the time I did the work on myself, I was ready to welcome in my husband. And now it's the healthiest relationship I've ever been in because he was out there doing the work on himself too. So when we both met, it was easy. It was like, oh, okay, we both know what we want. We got this.
And also that goes for not even just your intimate relationship, but also from our friendships perspective too. I think you've always said a lot of times that, sometimes your friends are just for a season. You outgrow them or they're just stuck in a weird pattern that you're kind of like, you know what? I'm not attracted to that anymore. I'm doing the work on myself. I expect you to do work on yourself. And if you're not, I don't want to be around that energy that's not suited for my next level of whatever it is that I'm going to be.
That's a hard, lonely, sad space to be in. It's not like I choose that, but it's just what happens. Not in a space of like I'm better than anyone or I'm more healed than anyone, but I think when you unlock this level of self-awareness or this type of work, God is like, no, I need you to do this because then I need you to guide others. You have to be intentional about that. Sometimes you can have relationships and they just no longer align. Doesn't mean there's any drama with anyone. It's just we're all living our life. And sometimes you do got to break away from the pack because you got to be focused on what it is that God is calling you to do. You can't do that if there's a lot of noise around.
Very true. That's a lot of white noise.
Or there's drama going on or whatever the case, and I'm in my peaceful era.
I'm in my peaceful era. I'm in my stress-free era. I do not want wrinkles on my face. I just want to be looking like my youthful self forever. And I don't want to be around that type of energy that's going to be stressing me out. What do you think, like, we've talked about competition. So what do you think, or how would you say, what does confidence reframed look like?
It's interesting because I talk about this part kind of like I talk about it in chapter 7 where we explore self-love and authenticity because I feel like true confidence is born from that inner work. It's not necessarily loud. It's not performance. It's present. It's the quiet, sacred decision to stop shrinking in rooms that once made you question your worth. For years, I thought confident meant being on, always composed, always knowing the right answer, always being put together. But real confidence is much softer and much deeper than that. Like when you no longer feel the need to audition for your value. And it's like walking into a room and seeing another woman shine and still knowing like, hey, my light matters too. And stop overextending yourself to be chosen.
I like that.
Like I said, it's not loud. It's not performance. It's just your true, authentic presence. That's
your feminine era.
Yes.
It's basically is that fog, that's reminding you that your turn is coming to you. And you did say that because that's what confidence looked like. I also like to think that confidence is that pause between envy and reaction. When you think about it, that pause is where emotional maturity lives and you can feel the envy without acting out of jealousy. Envy is not a bad thing if it's corrected because in a sense, you're sitting there going, oh my God, that person did something great. You know what? I want to do what she's doing too. So it's basically giving you that healthy competition, making you want to elevate yourself as well. I never thought I had that confidence to do that. And you can go to your friend and be like, you know what? I like what you're doing here. Can you help me out? How do I get there? As opposed to internalizing or feeling that jealousy of, I can't believe they did that and didn't tell me.
Yeah, because I do believe being confident doesn't mean never feel insecure, but it means feel enough to not let your insecurity mistreat somebody else. And for you to compliment people freely or to say like, hey girl, you doing your thing. And confidence is also knowing there's room for all of us at the table. And if there isn't, we can just build a new table.
Or we
But
just
we
pull
all
up a
can
chair,
win
girl.
here.
Pull up an extra chair. We
Yeah.
all just pull up the chair.
We can all win here.
What I found is that shared wins and collaborative frameworks reduce competition and increases confidence.
Yeah, I think it's a practice, right? Like it's about building those bridges, about building the connection in that as well. Letting everybody know there's room for all of us to be at the table and win and shine.
I like that. We all win and shine.
Because as we're having this conversation, it made me think about, actually, when did you realize another woman wasn't your competition, but an ally? For me, I never grew up feeling the need to compete with women because I had to learn early in life that we each have our own unique path and purpose. And I was raised in the house with like three women where we all had to rely on each other to survive, not to outdo each other. So it kind of shaped how I viewed sisterhood as like not a threat, but as like a source of strength because we all needed each other. Like my mama and my grandma, they all needed each other to survive and raise me. Have you in your professional space felt like you have women competing with you?
Oh, all the time. You are working in corporate America. Have I had passive aggressiveness thrown at me? Of course I have. And then I've actually had managers where it was like, ma'am, why are you competing with me? I did have a manager who was not the best. I had to wind up leaving because it was like, I can't work for this person anymore. Why is it that I, as a person, have to rechange my entire existence
Right.
because I can't work for
It's so unfortunate too because I felt that energy in the workplace, like the subtle jabs or the need to constantly mention what they've accomplished or making sure to throw out how much money they're making. And not in a confident celebratory way, but in a way that's rooted in comparison. And then taking credit for your work being dismissed and not acknowledging my idea was good. You know what I just brought to the
That's
table.
so true. You know what my favorite part is when you leave the company and everyone's messaging you like,
Right.
oh, you should have never left. They don't know how to do nothing without you. And you're like, I knew it. Everyone's like, we knew you were the one doing all the hard work. Now everyone can see. And I'm like, thank you very, very much. So that is my favorite thing, checking in randomly. Like, how's X, Y, and Z? They're like, they're burning.
It's crazy over here.
Because I helped sell that ship over there. But as we continue having too much fun, you did mention when you were talking about the three women that raised you and sisterhood to solidarity, which I think is really great. And I really want to talk about a little bit of sisterhood and how that word sometimes feels very performative because everyone's in a sisterhood these days. And it's like, how do we reframe that? I came up with this thing that maybe it should be an alliance of women as opposed to a sisterhood. I feel like it's more intact and you won't just be using it frivolously. What do you think?
I agree with you. I've been thinking about how often we throw around the word sisterhood. I feel like sisterhood rooted in performance will collapse. But like solidarity and alliance is like, unshakable, and solidarity is like live. And it shows up when the room is quiet, when the cameras are off, like when the ego wants to walk away. That's like, like truth. Not, no, but seriously. And I think like solidarity too, like it goes back to like that's rooted in soul work as well. But like you just being friends with someone under a performance thing, it doesn't last. It's kind of easy to support somebody when it's convenient as far as the sisterhood, right? But solidarity will ask you, can you support her when no one is watching, when she's not trending? When
Yes.
she's struggling, but she's still showing up for you, right?
I feel like with solidarity, it's also that correction with love. It's not always, like you
Right.
said, celebrating that win, but it's also being able to take that constructive criticism, in a sense, from your friend. And that's what's really important, what people kind of miss. The sisterhood is always rah, 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 yay, yay, yay. But if you're in a sacred alliance or solidarity, you're going to have both sides of that coin. You're going to have the good and the bad, but you're going to also be excited because you're going to be like, you know what, that person is taking into account all of the things that I'm seeing from all different angles and helping me build myself into a better person.
Right. Because solidarity isn't just about viral posts. It's like those quiet texts, like somebody's like struggling. It's like how we talked about like celebrating each other without comparison, holding space and not like keeping score, Like women who can say like how you mentioned earlier, like saying, hey, your shine like inspires me to be better or to do the work on myself. In my journal too, in chapter 8, I talk about how relationships are like sacred mirrors of our growth. That's why it's important to, especially as you get older, because I'm 46 now, of like thinking about the type of friendship that you want to like cultivate and like have around you. It's important, and especially if you're on your own healing journey and doing the soul work. You can't have everybody in the mix of that. The relationships that we have, because they are the mirrors, like they stretch us, they shape us, they reveal wounds that we're still healing. And the love we're still learning, trying to figure out how to receive. I believe some people come into our life for a season, and some are divinely led to walk with us.
Yeah. And this kind of wraps it up in a nutshell. Like, how do we model this for the next generation, right? It's like the next generation is watching us. So we have to show them. And I think you have done a great job in your book, what healing is and not hostility, and what confident women don't compete, they collaborate. I want to ask you this question, though. Who's the one woman you can celebrate today? Not for the clout, but from a genuine place of honor.
I'm going to celebrate you today because I'm proud of you and the work you are doing with this podcast. Because you had your first season, right? And at your first season, you had a co-host, but now you have chosen to accept the calling to continue forward on your own. That's really special to me. I'm really proud of you and I root for you. I've always thought since I met you, like, oh, she has the gift of gab. She is the marketing. She knows how to tell a story. She definitely knows how to put some marketing materials together.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, yeah, I'm inspired by you, like, doing this podcast and for having me on here because, you know, me, I'm kind of like a background type of person. I don't really like, I mean, yes, you and I having our phone conversations is one thing, but you invited me to be a guest on your show, put my book out there. This is the first podcast that I've ever been on. And I'm honored that it was yours and that you invited me to be in the space. And as far as like, you know, how we can model that confidence for the next generation, you know, I think it starts about, I think it will start one with this podcast, just so people can see the relationship and dynamic we have. It starts with how we talk about and to each other. Modeling confidence is like saying you're allowed to shine without guilt, and I'm allowed to celebrate you without shrinking. It looks like teaching the next generation you don't have to be the only one to be valuable. Like solidarity, what that is for the solidarity part. This will we should normalize like emotional honesty, mutual respect, spiritual alignment in our friendship. Not just photo ops, but like everyday support, you know, like the prayers that you said when we text each other, even though we may not have talked in a few weeks, like, hey, you good girl over there?
Did you get that TikTok?
Right, because that's one thing we're going to do. We ran out of time, but we're like, oh, she alive. Okay, I got to do TikTok today.
Oh, well, that being said, I want to say no from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so, so much because A, I was not expecting that. But also B, you're an introvert. I'm an extrovert. That's why we're yin and yang. We get to go together. We can't both be the same. But no, you have been one of the special people that have been in my life since I moved to California. And I do enjoy our conversations. I literally just love our friendship. And I am so happy for you with all your different journeys and all your different companies that you're doing. But this book is something that I think is very sacred to you. And it's come from a really great place of healing from yourself. And I'm happy to give you this platform to talk about it. Like you said, the next generation can see that two amazing women can be friends and uplift each other and not be too busy trying to figure out if I got more likes than you at the end of the day. It's more than just photo ops, bottomless mimosas and brunch, which we should still do. I still love those, though.
100%. But it's like beyond that, right? We have a deeper relationship and a deeper collection where, because it's one of those things, like you can have a lot of like acquaintance, but do you have like friendships that have real depth? That like if you are in the trenches of life, can I call you? Because I need to talk about this. If things are bad, I can show up in my messy, authentic self, and you're not going to judge me. You're going to try to give me words of wisdom to help me navigate whatever the thing in life is. And I think that's the point of having those type of friendships, that type of solidarity, you know, not just the surface level relationship.
You need to go deep. You need to be like,
yeah, because the world is crazy right now, you know. We're all battling our own thing, trying to make it. you know?
That's true.
Figure out the price.
And we need our little alliance, even if it's not with like 10 people. I always like to tell people it's not always about quantity, it's about quality. So always remember that.
100%.
I'd rather have one good friend than to have 100 friends that they're not even my friends, they're my associates. So always remember that and take that with you. When you need them and they don't show up, you know why, because they were never qualified to be your friend in the first place. But I'm going to wrap up this episode, but I'm just so excited that I was able to do this episode with you. It means a lot to me. I'm going to allow you to close it out after me, which is going to be fun. So I hope you get yourself ready for that. I just want everyone to understand that. So here's the truth, that other women aren't our competition, like we've said before. They're really our allies and alliances. And what I want to really stress here is that boundaries protect us and solidarity strengthens us. Confidence gives us the space to celebrate each other. We don't have to compete. We can collaborate. That's how we rise together. So remember that. I'm going to close it out for myself, but I want Natalya to close it out with her own last words. And one more time, thank you guys for listening.
I just want to say the next generation, they are watching us. I'm a Gen Xer. You're an older millennial.
But
they are watching us. So I think it's that time where it's like we need to show them what healed looks like. Like I feel like we're at a time where God is calling more people to show up like authentic women who have like done the work, because there is a different type of healing occurring in the world right now. Let's show them confident, grounded women. They don't compete. They collaborate with each other. And I want to say thank you again for having me on your Cringe and Crumble podcast. Thank you to everyone that will tune in and share the space with us. And if anything in this conversation resonated with you, I invite you to pass on to another woman who may need the reminder that you don't have to compete to shine. You just have to heal enough to remember who you are. You know, like let this be your permission slip to stand in your truth, walk in your purpose, and celebrate other women without dimming your own light. And if you are on your own healing journey, I'd love for you to check out my new self-reflection journal, Anchored in Grace, The Journey of Faith, Solitude, Healing, and Transformation. It is now available on NatalyaTChapman.com and Amazon. Let's keep healing and building together.
Look at you. You clock that, girl. Okay, you should get your own little podcast. I love it. All right. Once again, she said it best. You know where to find her book. She's on Amazon. Have fun. Like, I'm so happy for you. Thanks again.
I can't wait to see this podcast blow up so you can retire me.
No, you're retiring me. All right. That's a wrap. Laugh at the cringe, learn from the crumble. This is Cringe and Crumble. Until next time.